C for Me deserves praise for having a legally blind person as their lead and also have the character be legally blind. Unfortunately, as much as you have to appreciate the self contained thriller, which all takes place in one house and its surrounding environment, it doesn't have the supporting roles needed to really boost this film to where it needed to be. So, to give a brief summary, Sophie's skiing career ended about 3 or 4 years ago after a retinal disease caused her to go blind. Since her career being put on pause or just straight up ending, she has now done house sitting, and between the payment she gets for house sitting and sometimes taking care of people's pets and stealing wine bottles and selling them on market, that is how she's supporting herself, even though she does still live with her mother. But when it comes to this new house that she goes to, it's not as easy as a situation because the person she's house sitting for is recently divorced and apparently is holding over $7 million in a safe, thus leading to people trying to break into the house to get that money. And with them not knowing that Sophie is there, so comes Sophie having to use some of her manipulation skills and even tap into that, you know, morally ambiguous side of her in order to possibly survive the night. So when it comes to characters in this movie, the main two we're going to talk about is Sophie, who we've already introduced, and Kelly. Kelly is somebody who is a member of the armed forces, but for reasons that aren't dived into right now, she's on desk duty. And in order to kind of cope with that, she plays a lot of, war video games. And she also does work for C for Me, either for a human connection, for some extra money. It's not really clear why she decided to pick this specific job. Maybe it's because it allows her to work from home in Florida. Again, you get the gist, you don't get real details when it comes to who Kelly is. All that matters is that Kelly's the main one that keeps Sophie alive as long as she can, or at least, perhaps better said, when Sophie listens to Kelly, she is the one that helps her throughout the experience of dealing with being burglarized. Our first highlight is Sophie, and it's mainly because she doesn't fit that mold of how most movies usually put people like her. Sophie is not somebody that's overly nice and innocent. She's not portrayed as this other victim who you're supposed to feel sorry for. No, Sophie is somebody who has sass, who has an attitude, often can come off like a jerk. And on top of that, she's stealing from people with her excuse being that they're rich, and also since she doesn't like their pity, she feels like this is her only means of a comeuppance. And just presenting that whole moral ambiguity on top of her being someone who, I don't know, as much as you have a lot of reasons not to like Sophie, there's something about her being somebody that's legally blind yet also being an ass that makes you drawn to her. And it makes it so when it comes to the 3 or more burglars, you don't want to see them hurt her not because of her blindness, because the blindness might act as a hook and it's a good part of the marketing, but after some point you don't care about that. You more so care about Sophie as an individual and her getting out, not this blind girl who is in a vulnerable state that you don't want to see get hurt by a bunch of guys who can easily take advantage of her. The second highlight is Kelly, and the main reason we enjoy Kelly is because she is a perfectly written supporting character. The way she's written, you're given enough to be intrigued by who she is and care who she is, but I feel like they just either they're at the line or just barely missed it in terms of you not wanting follow-up, in terms of learning more about her when it comes to why she's put on the desk when it comes to the army, why she got into the army, why does she work for C for Me, and all this other stuff. It's stuff that you want to ask, but you don't feel like it's something that, because it was left out, you didn't get pertinent information. And I feel like when it comes to supporting characters, especially in films like this, having that balance can sometimes be difficult. And while the movie just barely misses the mark, it's still close enough to that line where, unless you're over analyzing the movie, it won't really be a big thing to you. In terms of low points, it has to be the villains, and it's mainly because the villains, their motivation is just money. There is no deeper meaning. The characters don't really have personalities that are really notable. Yes, one of them is definitely more prone to violence. One is a bit more, I'm just here to do the job. I'm not trying to deal with this girl and, figure out what to do with her. And it just makes for a boring watch because with them being so dull, it gives Sophie no one to really play off of. And yes, you can see because of who she is, trying to turn a situation from something bad, which could be hurtful to her, to something that could benefit her. But again, these men don't have the kind of personalities where it really makes you care about them. They're, unlike Kelly, their role as some type of supporting position doesn't lead to anything fruitful for them. In fact, the only positive thing I could probably think of when it comes to these guys is that they don't take advantage of Sophie being blind, or rather, they don't say anything that's sexist or ableist when it comes to her. And that's pretty much the only positive thing I can really say about these guys. So, overall, I'm very mixed on when it comes to this, because it's a bit of a divisive film. Yes, you have to applaud the diversity in terms of having a legally blind character as a lead and having him played by a legally blind person. However, I don't feel that the movie really expands too much beyond that. And while, yes, I enjoy Kelly, she is put into a box and she's not allowed to really move out of that box in terms of what her purpose is. And Sophie, as much as she has enough charisma for you to want to see her lived until the end, I wouldn't say because of the villain she's dealing with, the threat ever really seems real. And add on that these villains are just basically about their money. And when it comes to Sophie, she's an annoyance, not like a real threat to them. There's no real, I want to say pressure, but that's not the word I'm looking for, but there's no real pressure for you to feel like anything is truly dire. And yes, cops are coming and all that stuff, but if anything, that puts pressure on the villain to hurry up. It doesn't put pressure on Sophie in terms of her being in a life or death situation. At least I didn't feel like in the movie that Sophie could potentially get harmed by either gunshot, knife, punch in the face, or anything like that. She was just somebody who had to bide her time and with Kelly figure out a way to survive the night.